It's what you hearing. It's what you hearing. Listen. It's what you hearing. Listen. It's what you hearing. Listen. X gon' give it to you. Wait for you to get it on your own. X gon' deliver to you. Knock, knock. Open up the door. It's real. With the non-stop.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fantasy Football X Factor podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Lamarco, and today we'll be diving into the Indianapolis Colts. I'll also be doing at the end of the podcast, guys, we'll be over my top 5 sleeper wide receivers not being drafted in 2018. So stay around for that as well. So just give you a quick overview about what we'll be doing today. I'm going to be kind of doing a combination of a couple stuff. I'm going to be taking us through a review of the 2016 season. Obviously, the reason why behind that is Andrew Luck played that year. Last year, Jacoby Brissett came in late in the season via trade from the Patriots. I'm not going to really go into the team stats because obviously no Andrew Luck. He's a game changer. The reports out of camp is he looks healthy. He's ready to go. And, of course, we've seen him in preseason. I'm excited. And also the changes that Frank Reich is in town now. So him and his offensive coordinator, Nick Sirianni, are in there now. We'll be talking about their impact on the offense. So 2016 review, last time Andrew Luck played. This team was obviously built like the Colts have been built even through the Peyton Manning years. It's just a shame that their defenses are horrific and their running games are always below par, but they have elite quarterbacks. So Andrew Luck, of course, they finished 8-8 that season because their defense was horrendous and their running game was non-existent. Andrew Luck still finished 5th in yards, 8th in yards per attempt, and 6th in touchdowns. And like I said, the rushing offense was 23rd in the NFL in yards, 20th in yards per carry, and DVOA rank was ranked 10th actually, which is great. And they finished 16th in touchdowns. This offense still finished 8th in scoring. Andrew Luck is a game changer. Him coming back to this offense is just a boon to everybody. But also, Rob Chudzinski is now kind of my favorite non-guy offensive mind that doesn't have a job. He's a good offensive mind. But the problem was he was handcuffed by Chuck Pagano. And I think Frank Reich coming in here, bringing that offensive mind from top to bottom is great news for Andrew Luck. But we'll dive into that in a second. So the offensive line is greatly improved. They actually moved up 8 spots in 2018. They're ranked 17th in Pro Football Focus offensive line ranking. So this might be the best offensive line they've had in years. And especially since Andrew Luck has been there, that's a lot of room for optimism. They finished 21st in pass blocking, 29th in run blocking last season, and 30th in yards before contact. I mean, it was just a disaster all across the line. A lot of injuries as well. Even their center, Ryan Kelly, was injured last year. Denzel Good. I mean, you name it. They had a lot of injuries. But so the keys to the offensive line is with the changes they made. Obviously, Matt Slauson, they brought in. He's a veteran guard. You know, he was ranked 49th in Pro Football Focus guard rankings, but he's actually a veteran presence, good for the middle of that offensive line. He might play some center as well. He did for the Chargers. They drafted Quentin Nelson, who everyone's already talking about how this guy's going to be a future All-Pro. So he was a round 1. And then they drafted another guard in Brendan Smith in the 2nd. So they invested a lot in this offensive line. That's exciting. This is what happens when you have a good GM in there, which is good for for that entire franchise. And bringing in Frank Reich as well. And like I just touched on too, Ryan Kelly, their first-round pick, he got hurt last season. He's coming back as well. And, so there's a lot of room. Anthony Costanzo, their left tackle, is still hurt. He's not playing much in camp, so that's something to monitor. But overall, this line is just so much better. That's just great news for Andrew Luck. And this is really kind of the forefront of every offensive team. You need to have that dominant, good offensive line if you really want to be successful in all phases of the offensive game. So now let's talk about Frank Reich. So the coaching change, obviously, the biggest thing is everyone's talking about how he came from, Doug Peterson and the Eagles, and that's not the offense he's going to be running. So Frank Reich comes from an offense called the Erhardt Perkins Offense. The Erhardt Perkins Offense is one of the older school. There's like 3 main offenses in the NFL: the West Coast, the Air Coryell, and then of course the Erhardt Perkins. This offensive philosophy. Now, the reason why I'll tell you I believe he's running this offensive scheme. This is what he ran in San Diego. He didn't run a West Coast offense like Andy Reid. But also, he brought in his guy. He brought in Nick Sirianni, the wide receiver coach from San Diego. He was the wide receiver coach under Frank Reich. He actually was the QB coach as well, under Frank Reich as well, in San Diego. And he brought him over to be his offensive coordinator. He didn't bring over an Andy Reid, Doug Peterson, West Coast guy. He brought over an Erhardt Perkins offensive guy. And I have the belief he ran that in San Diego. That's what we're going to see here. And what is this offense? So he comes from the tree of Ken Wisenhunt, Mike McCoy, Todd Haley. These are the guys that run this offense that you're going to be familiar with. Mike Munchak. These don't sound like world beaters. I mean, obviously but these guys are great coordinators. So Ken Wisenhunt, you can say what you want as a head coach. Great coordinator. He's coached some big years in Arizona when he was the coach with Todd Haley, but also he had some great years with San Diego with Phillip Rivers. And, Mike Munchak, even he had Ben Roethlisberger back in the day. I mean, Todd Haley, we've seen his success. This is the concept of the offense they'll be running. But the most notable of these guys, of course, is Bill Belichick. This is the offense the Patriots run. The Patriots have mastered it. And the reason why, when I learned over the last couple of days, I've been kind of reviewing this stuff, is that this offensive philosophy is concept-based. So it doesn't matter who's out there. So the personnel might change, but the concepts and the offense stay the same. So we've thought over the years that the Patriots have changed their offenses every year. They have not. The personnel has changed. So you can run the same offense through 2 tight ends, 3 wide receiver sets, and it's just based on who are your best players. So I took a look at to see, how do quarterbacks operate in this offense. So in Frank Reich's 2 seasons in San Diego as the offensive coordinator, they went extremely pass heavy. He's already on record saying that he needs to stick to the run more, which is good. Another thing, so Phillip Rivers, those 2 seasons, he finished QB 15 and QB 17. The most notable player was Antonio Gates. Antonio Gates finished tight end 2 and tight end 7 in those 2 seasons. And Keenan Allen also was very involved as a receiver. He didn't finish well, but the second season, he was actually on pace. In the first 8 games, he had 89 targets. He was a target hog. And that's one of the themes we'll be talking about too later in the podcast, is that these offenses feature a number 1 receiver, and they are target monsters. I mean, I'm talking from Wes Welker and Randy Moss for the Patriots to Demaryius Thomas and under Adam Gase. Adam Gase is another guy who runs this offense as well. These guys have a true number 1. T.Y. Hilton has a huge target volume this year. So the run game, actually, this is one thing I'll talk about too. You'll hear is that for some reason, these guys love holding back rookies. So Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins, as I know they're great guys. They're getting drafted right now in half-point PPR leagues. Just stop drafting them. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to go over this in a little bit, but you'll be surprised how many star rookie running backs have been held back from these coaching trees. Because of the concepts in this offense, it's a lot more difficult for rookie running backs to step in and dominate. The only guy who's ever done it is Le'Veon Bell. And I don't think Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins is Le'Veon Bell. I digress. The one prime example was Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon, if you remember his rookie season, he was held back early on. They didn't get a lot of touches until they were out of it, and then they started featuring him. Danny Woodhead was the guy to own. He was an RB14 in points per game that season. He had 106 targets, especially because that was the year that we all remember Keenan Allen got hurt. So they didn't really use Melvin Gordon until out of the season, and I remember this very well. And from my fantasy league, obviously, Danny Woodhead. I have a T-shirt that says Danny freaking Woodhead because he ruined my playoffs that season. But anyway, so this is kind of what I've noticed too through that. So that passing game, he utilizes, it goes to the strengths of their players. What I mean by is this. So if you're a 2 tight end set or a 3 wide receiver set, it's based on words. So like they'll say Tango Whiskey, right? So Tango Whiskey, it's a quarterback-based offense. So if the quarterback walks up and the route combination's Tango on the left, if he sees something that he doesn't like, he can go kill, and go from Tango to Vodka. So you say Vodka Whiskey. Now you have to run Vodka on the left-hand side. So it changes the route combination. This is why it's so difficult for receivers. Like you hear in New England, they can't pick up the offense because on the fly, you need to remember every concept because if the quarterback sees something, he has the ability to change. And that's what's going to roll us right into the player profiles with Andrew Luck. I'm excited for Andrew Luck because this offense is fantastic for elite quarterbacks. Some of the notable guys that have been in this offense, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Matt Ryan, Kurt Warner. These are some elite quarterbacks that have played in this system but have produced at elite levels in this system. This system only does well with elite quarterbacks. You need to be smart, you need to be able to control the offensive line, but you also need to be on the same page with your players. And that's why you hear all the time, you need to, Tom Brady, if he doesn't trust you, don't even bother being on the field. So that's just one thing we have to say. So Andrew Luck, that season in 2016, he finished as the QB5 in points per game. This year he's being drafted as the QB8 in round 8. He's a league winner. I mean, listen, I have a draft philosophy as I don't draft quarterbacks until the last I stream them. But Andrew Luck is a league winner. And it's just the fact that, like, right now in the 8th round, he's not going to stay there. He's going to be closer to the 6th round, maybe in the 5th. I mean, it's once they start airing this ball out a little bit more, he's going to rise. So let's just talk a little bit about these quarterbacks. So, like I just touched on, this scheme is basically you have to have a smart quarterback who's a field general because he has the most flexibility of any scheme in the NFL. So if you have a smart quarterback, I mean, Andrew Luck was a first-round pick out of Stanford. This guy, he's elite. So I have all the faith in the world that he's going to produce in this offense. But here's some notable quarterbacks who actually produced well in their first years. Kurt Warner in his 2008 season. So he actually was under Ken Whisenhunt in 2007. He wasn't the starter. It was Matt Leinart. He took over full-time in 2008. He finished with 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns. Big Ben, first season under Todd Haley. He finished with 3,200 yards and 26 touchdowns in 13 games. So he was on pace for a much bigger season. Of course, Matt Ryan, he was actually brought into the league under Mike Munchak. In this system, he had his best season. He had 4,100 yards and 29 touchdowns. He was his first few years, and he kind of developed through this system, but we saw him get a 4,000-yard and almost a 30-touchdown season. But the two heavy hitters of this offense are Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. Tom Brady, of course, we remember that 50 touch. This is the kind of upside this offense has. So remember that Randy Moss, Wes Welker epic season? Yeah, that was under this Erhardt Perkins offense with Tom Brady. They scored 50 touchdowns. And then the most notable, though, is Peyton Manning. So under Adam Gase, I mean, Peyton Manning was there with Mike McCoy. Mike McCoy he's the one guy who doesn't run the system. He does a West Coast. He mixes in and out. He's not dedicated like these other guys are. It wasn't until Adam Gase took over as the full-time OC in 2013. That season, Peyton Manning threw for 5,400 yards and 55 touchdowns. Yeah, that's the kind of offense we have for Andrew Luck right now. That doesn't get you excited? I don't know what does. It just has big volume potential for this team. And then if they can get them clicking, but Andrew Luck, I have the faith to get this offense clicking. He doesn't have the talent. We see this with Tom Brady. I mean, Tom Brady, when he had Randy Moss and Wes Welker in their primes, he throws 50 touchdowns. T.Y. Hilton, Jack Doyle and company, I like them guys, but they're not that level, so you're not going to see that level of production. You're going to see what Tom Brady does all the time, though. Andrew Luck is that talented. I think in the 8th round, if he stays there, he won't. Andrew Luck's a league winner. He's great. So, listen, I'm not going to ever have him. He's going to move up too fast. But this kind of offense, he's got a lot of potential. So, running backs. So, like I told you before, the one biggest thing I saw was, in 2016, obviously Frank Gore was there. He's vacating 261 carries and 38 targets from last season. But also in 2016, he was the RB19. So there was a top 20 running back in this offense. Marlon Mack is the most notable guy coming back. He's right now his ADP, so RB35 in the 7th round. And then you got Robert Turbin and a bunch of the rookies. Naheem Hines, Jordan Wilkins. And then Christine Michael. Yeah. Oh, my God. Because he won't go away. He's like a virus. But he's still around. But you saw it in the preseason, guys. Watch the preseason game. Naheem Hines and Jordan Wilkins are not playing with Andrew Luck. They had Josh Ferguson and Christine Michael playing above them because they hold these guys back. They did it to Melvin Gordon. They did it to notable. So I'll give you some notable running backs they did it to. Willie Parker, Beanie Wells, Ryan Matthews, Melvin Gordon, Jamal Charles was playing behind Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson in his age 30 season, he was averaging 2.9 yards per carry. Jamal Charles was averaging 5.9 that season. He still played behind Larry Johnson for most of the year. That's what they're doing. I don't know what it is about this offense, but this coaching tree, the Whisenhunts, the Frank Reich, the Todd Haleys, these guys that have been bunched together, they don't start rookie running backs. If they do get a chance, it's going to be later in the season, but I'm putting my money on Marlon Mack, and here's why. So this offense really loves bell cows. So we can go back to Jerome Bettis in 2004, 250 carries. Willie Parker, 255. These guys were under Ken Whisenhunt when he was the OC there, but you can even branch off. Edgerrin James, 324. Beanie Wells, 245. Ryan Matthews, 285. Melvin Gordon, 254. That was under Ken Whisenhunt in 2016. And then Ken Whisenhunt in 2017 was 284. So, I mean, these guys, I mean, Ryan Matthews has seen a high volume count as well. And even if you want to throw in like a C.J. Anderson for Mike McCoy when he was trying to run the Erhardt Perkins offense, he got 245. So there's a big timeshare, there's a volume running back in this offense. And of course, Todd Haley. Who can forget Todd Haley? Todd Haley with Le'Veon Bell. Todd Haley with Jamal Charles when he first started out. I mean, Le'Veon Bell has become the best running back of our generation under Todd Haley. Todd Haley, when he first went out there to Pittsburgh, the first season, they didn't have an RB. They tried to do this little timeshare. What did they do the next season? They drafted Le'Veon Bell in the second round. Le'Veon Bell's the only one that broke that mold. He started off with an ankle injury, started week 3, he got the touches, and you saw the beginning, and then he became the volume monster that Todd Haley wants. That's the kind of team, this offense they want. That guy's going to be Marlon Mack. So I think his injury is really concerning because it's a hamstring. Plus, he can't stay healthy. But I'm shooting my shot. So in the 7th round, listen, Marlon Mack has the potential to be this year's Kareem Hunt. And Kareem Hunt, Alvin Kamara, these later round running backs that, we kind of just didn't even think about. Of course, Kareem Hunt was different. I meant to say Alvin Kamara, my apologies. These guys in the late rounds, that we just didn't see coming. Marlon Mack has the potential in this offense to be that guy. They don't want to start a rookie. Robert Turgeon suspended the first 4 weeks. There are guys like Christine Michael and Josh Ferguson were getting touches out there. Marlon Mack is the guy. He looked good in the first week and then he gets hurt. But in the 7th round, listen, I'm going after guys like Marlon Mack. I mean, listen, Jamal Williams is there. Carlos Hyde is there. And listen, Carlos Hyde, he is playing under Todd Haley this season. We'll see. I mean, he might become something, but Duke Johnson's there as well. Marlon Mack has an opportunity to monopolize the touches in his offense based on the past. Marlon Mack could easily become the wide receiver 3 in this offense. And by wide receiver, I mean receiving option. So what I mean is like right now, today, T.Y. Hilton's 1, Jack Doyle's 2, who's 3? It could be Ryan Grant. It could be Chester Rogers. It could be Eric Ebron. But it could easily be Marlon Mack. So we've seen it with Le'Veon Bell. He became like the 3rd option in the offense, and he becomes a target dominator. I mean, even last season, Le'Veon Bell was the number 2 option. That's the kind of level of opportunity Marlon Mack has. That's why you got to give him a chance in the later rounds in the 7th round. So receiving. Obviously, the biggest departure was Dante Moncrief. Left 47 targets, whoop-de-doo. And then Eric Ebron and Ryan Grant come in. Deion Kane was drafted in the 6th round. I was a big fan of Deion Kane, but he was like a shorts and t-shirt guy. Once the pad comes on, this offense is very complex. It's complex. It's a little bit tougher for rookies to come in and dominate. So he's out for the season with an ACL anyway, so he's done. So really it comes down to Ryan Grant, Chester Rogers, Eric Ebron. Who's going to take over is the potential next guy. So the reason why this is important is that, so we're going to touch on like those big seasons. So we just talked about the Kurt Warner, Big Ben, Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, and of course we talked about Peyton Manning's big season. So in those seasons though, this is what my point is. Randy Moss for 2007 Pats, 160 targets. Wes Welker, 145, okay? 2008 under Kurt Warner that season, 154 for Larry Fitzgerald, 127 for Bolden, and 113 for Breston. So there was 3 wide receivers in that year, all with 100 targets. 2011 in Matt Ryan, 180 for Roddy White, 116 for Tony Gonzalez, and 95 for Julio, a nice young man named Julio Jones. Just more guys in this offense has an opportunity to really take over. 2012 with the Steelers, Mike Wallace, 119. Antonio Brown, 106. Heath Miller, 101. Broncos. That season was insane. But 142 for Demaryius Thomas, 136 for Eric Decker, 111 for Wes Welker. Now, the thing is you'll notice right off the bat is that, there's multiple seasons with 3 guys with over 100 targets. That's the kind of opportunity wide receiver 2 could have in this offense. Right now, it's going to be T.Y. Hilton. Number 2 is Jack Doyle. We'll touch on Jack in a little bit. I'm going to coin that phrase, Captain Jack Doyle. That's my go-to there. But Ryan Grant right now is the favorite to be the number 2 receiver. He has a lot of opportunity, and he's actually in my later piece when I do the undrafted receivers that you should be drafting in 2018. Because right now, today, he's got the lead for the number 2 job. He's playing in 2 wide receiver sets. But also the way this offense operates, they do give at least 3 pass catchers in the offense a big opportunity. So he's worth taking a shot on in the later rounds. But T.Y. Hilton. So T.Y. Hilton right now today is going in the high 3rd round. He's the wide receiver 10. Now, of course, it's tough to draft T.Y. Hilton over A.J. Green, Keenan Allen, Julio Jones. It's tough. but he's got 150 targets locked in for him. This season, he's going to be one of the true volume producers. In 2016, he had just that. He had over 150 targets. He finished as the wide receiver 7. That's what you're going to be looking at this season from T.Y. Hilton. He's going to go right back to that because of the Erhardt Perkins offense. They feature a number 1. I mean, I just listed up a couple of guys. Roddy White with a 180, Randy Moss, but Wes Welker, before Randy Moss got there, was getting 170. True number 2 in that offense that's going to hog up the yards and the targets that, the guys like Antonio Brown and Julio Jones were the number 2 receivers. Anquan Bolden. Ryan Grant's not those guys. T.Y. Hilton's got big target potential. You're taking him in the top. The wide receiver 10 is fine. Take him there. I have no problem taking him at wide receiver 9 either. If you can take Hilton in the back of the second and Diggs in the beginning of the third, go for it. So the tight end. So my thing is this. I talked about in the last episode. Captain Jack Doyle is my guy. He's my guy for this season. I love him. ADP tight end 12, round 11. He's an every down tight end in this offense. But also, camp reports are already coming out that he's the red zone guy. T.Y. Hilton's not a red zone threat. Deion Kane was supposed to be this big guy. He's out for the season. It's going to be Jack Doyle. And the thing is, listen, everyone's worried about Ebron. Ebron has been dealing with drops in camp, but also when you saw it in the preseason, Jack Doyle played every snap. This Erhardt Perkins offense that we saw, of course, Delaney Walker under Ken Wisenhunt had 106 targets and 133. Antonio Gates under Frank Reich led the team in targets one season with 114. The next season he had over 100. Guys like Julius Thomas had big seasons. Heath Miller had big seasons in this system as well. And Rob Gronkowski, of course, don't forget about him. But that's the kind of target potential he'll have. He was one of 6 guys last season to have 100 targets, coming from Jacoby Brissett. He finished as the tight end 5. If you take his production, listen, last year was the biggest down year for tight ends across the board in years. So last season he was the tight end 5. His production, even if you put him at his production in 2017, if you put it in 2016, he would have finished as the tight end 12. So, I mean, listen, he has the opportunity to be a top 12 tight end, but he has the opportunity to be a top 6 tight end in this offense because he's going to get the target volume coming from Andrew Luck. It's not Jacoby Brissett anymore. It's Andrew Luck. So taking him in the 10th round is probably one of my favorite things to do this year as a draft strategy. I'm in love with him. So let's just recap the Colts. I know that was a lot to take in. So obviously this year it's not going to be an Andy Reid West Coast offense, so we can get that thrown out of our head. The reason why I told you before is because Frank Reich runs that Erhardt Perkins offense, the offense that comes from Bill Belichick and the Patriots run. Bill Parcells ran it in the 80s as well. And also guys that in the early 2000s have run it is Ken Wisenhunt, Mike Munchak. Those guys ran that offense. And even Frank Reich ran it in San Diego. And, of course, the reason why I believe that is because he brought in Nick Sirianni, who is a Todd Haley guy who came over from San Diego, who coached under Frank Reich and Ken Wisenhunt. So I think that's the offense that's going to be implemented. It features a true bell cow running back. And when it's performed by an elite quarterback, it's an elite offense. So I think that's got a lot of upside. I think T.Y. Hilton's a lock for 150 targets, making him a very safe pick in the back end of the second or the beginning of the third. And then, of course, you got to take your shot. I'm taking my shot with Marlon Mack in the 7th. I just feel like this team does not play rookie running backs as much as they want to. They might have to. But, I mean, Christine Michael is just a guy when it comes to running the football. Robert Turbin in week 4, when he comes back, could be a factor as well. But Marlon Mack, I'm taking my shot with the 7th round. If he gets hurt, it is what it is. But he has the potential to be a monster in this offense. And then, of course, the wide receiver, too. Obviously, I think it's Jack Doyle, the best receiver to pick. He's a value in the 10th round. He's going to have a big season this year. After that, it's your shot. Take Ryan Grant. He's being undrafted. So that will be our segue into my 5 sleeper wide receivers not going drafted in 2018. So, number 1 right off the bat is Ted Ginn Jr. So we talked about this, guys. Read my articles online. Ted Ginn, last season, he had the same number of yards of separation as Tyreek Hill. He finished second in the team in air yards. He had the 25% share of the air yards in last season. Over the last 5 seasons, the Saints had over 5,100 air yards. Last season, it was down to 3,600. If they get half of that back, Ted Ginn has a shot at 1,000 yards this season. Early reports out of camp is Cam Meredith. A lot of guys like Cam Meredith, but he is in the mold of, he does what Michael Thomas does. Ted Ginn's a different receiver. He plays a different role in this offense. He'll be the deep threat. If they open up the offense like they should again this year, he's almost a lock for 1,000 yards in this offense. His game speed is still elite, according to Next Gen Stats, but also on a per route basis, he was great. 18th in yards per route run, 23rd in points per snap, and 18th in points per opportunity last season. Oh yeah, and he finishes a wide receiver 3. So this guy's not even being drafted. He finishes a wide receiver 3 last year. In a down year for wide receivers, he's probably closer to wide receiver 4, but they're going to bounce back. Who's the number 1 team that's probably going to bounce back? The Colts and probably the Saints. So take in. I'm telling you, you won't be disappointed. And right now, Cam Merritt is coming back from a very bad leg injury, a multi-ligament injury in his knee. It's going to take him a little more time. My number 2, of course, Ryan Grant, we just talked about. Since Andrew Luck entered the league, he has supported two top 30 wide receivers in 4 out of 5 seasons that he's played. The one season he played 7 games. In those 7 games, Moncrief was on his way to being a top 30 receiver as well. And of course, the reports say he separated himself in training camp. But like I said before, we talked about the offense that's going to be run this year. There's going to be a big opportunity for a number 3 option in the passing game. My number 3 guy, Tyler Boyd. So the news and everything's about John Ross, and I get that. But right now he's listed ahead of John Ross on the depth chart. He was a 2nd-round pick in the draft. His NFL comp was to Keenan Allen. He's got great hands. He's a precise route runner. He scored already in the preseason, but he's also been locked in camp. He's been the most consistent player in camp. Brandon LaFell's vacated 89 targets from last season that can go his way. I think he's worth a shot in the later rounds, especially in PPR leagues, because this offense does support a wide receiver 2 historically. With the improvements to offensive line, and of course, we'll touch on the Bengals in next week as I go over that NFC North piece, because Bill Lazor, I'm going to talk about him. But I think Tyler Boyd's got a shot at doing some work. I think John Ross is a nice piece, but I think Tyler Boyd is kind of more of a complete receiver. He's going to give you a lot more production early on in the season. My number 4, Deshaun Jackson. So obviously, like I said before, just the same again, these guys are my preseason risers. Look at my stuff from Deshaun Jackson. So last season, right off the bat, let's talk Chris Godwin. Let's talk Adam. I get it. If you watch the preseason games, guys, Deshaun Jackson plays in 2 wide receiver sets. Chris Godwin was the number 4 receiver onto the field. It's not close. They might make it sound like they're trying to get him involved. This offense, they're trying to get him more involved, but Deshaun Jackson offers something that none of these guys do. He has an elite game speed. He's a changer in the deep game. And these guys no one can replicate what he does. I mean, even Mike Evans can't replicate the speed off the top of the defense. They want to open up the game more for Mike Evans. It's Deshaun Jackson. And of course, guys like Dirk Court, they're not creative enough to invest in these young guys. They're too busy playing Peyton Barber. Come on now. I mean, listen, Ronald Jones looks terrible out there, but it's just insane. The Dirk Court is going to get fired, and it's pathetic. But Jameis Winston and all these guys are talking him up about the fact that he's the number 2 on this team. Camp reports already say that he's clearly the number 2. I know they're trying to say that they might start in 2 receiver sets. It's not true. You watch the preseason games. It's Deshaun Jackson still. But here's why I'm actually higher on him this year. Keep in mind he's going undrafted as well. Last season, 30% of Jackson's targets came on throws of 20 or more yards downfield. But of the 26 targets he saw, only 5 were recorded catchable in Pro Football Focus. That rating was 19%. That's 17% lower than the team average of 35 for all the other receivers on the team. This led to a huge drop in Jackson's production. In the previous 3 full seasons, Jackson, on throws 20 yards or more downfield, averaged 15 receptions, 593 yards, and 5 touchdowns. In 2017, he had 5 receptions, 131, and 1. So he had 4 less touchdowns and 400 yards less on those throws than his averages over the last 3 years. So the other reason, too, is his air yards are still there. So he had 1,400 air yards in 2017. Okay, he only converted that to he was below 50% in his yards gained to air yards, which is well below his 70% he has in his career. If you apply his career average to those air yards, he would have had 1,000 yards last season. He's going to bounce back. Plus, that's what Jackson does. He has a down year and comes back. He's worth a flyer for me in a team that 3 wide receivers, a great wide receiver 3, plug in there in a 12-team league because he's going to give you those boom weeks. And if you play best ball, go get Deshaun Jackson. He's like the ideal best ball player. And my last one on my list is Quincy Enunwa. So Quincy Enunwa, obviously, the thing is he comes from a big injury too last season. He was out for the season. But in 2016, he led the team in targets and touchdowns. But he came into camp, he's finally back healthy. And right off the bat, people are saying that he's looking to establish himself as the one. People are saying he looks the part as the one. But also Sam Darnold is the guy that I actually am interested in, because Sam Darnold, if you watch the preseason, was targeting the middle of the field. That's where Quincy Enunwa will make his money, is in the middle of the field. Trey McBride was the star of the preseason with Darnold because he was hitting him over the middle constantly. It wasn't Robbie Anderson. It wasn't Durain Curse. So I'm excited about Quincy Enunwa. He's going undrafted as well. But also, there's reports that he's established a good rapport already with Sam Darnold. So he's another guy that I expect to see, watching in the preseason and hoping that, we'll see how it goes. He's supposed to play against the Giants in preseason week 3. So that's my wrap-up. So Quincy Enunwa, Deshaun Jackson, Ted Ginn, Tyler Boyd, and Ryan Grant are my 5 sleeper wide receivers that are not being drafted in 2018 that you should be drafting. All right, guys, thanks for joining me again on the Colts podcast and just listening to my sleeper wide receivers. I'm Bobby Lamarco, the Fantasy Football X Factor. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at FFXFactor. Appreciate your time, guys. Have a good day.
X gon' give it to you. Wait for you to get it on your own. X gon' deliver to you. Knock, knock, open up the door, it's real. With the non-stop pop out and stainless steel. Go hard, getting busy with it.